Boom! Seplos is back. Yeah, Seplos is back on the agenda, guys. We are going to revisit the Seplos Polo batteries with the Seplos BMS version 3. I've received a lot of comments and emails from you guys, wanted me to revisit this specific Seplos BMS, and apparently there is a new firmware with version 0.8. Guys, welcome back to the off-grid garage in sunny. It's a beautiful day. We are expecting 200 amps outside today. Well, I hope you all enjoy your sunny Easter weekend. And if you don't celebrate Easter, just have a good weekend then. Well, the family was already here on Good Friday to celebrate Easter. So this gives me now time on Easter Sunday to make another video for you guys. So to upgrade the firmware on these version 3 BMSs, we have to disconnect all the communication first, because we need the RS485 ports on the back here to update the BMS. And if there's one cable still connected to another BMS, then it won't update. In fact, it doesn't even connect your computer software to your BMS. So you need to interrupt the communication to any other BMS while you're doing this. So, and all we need now is the Seplos RS485 adapter to USB. But you can also use any kind of USB to RS485 adapter. It doesn't need to be from Seplos. When you connect the other end of your LAN cable to your BMS, you can only use the RS485 1 port, not the RS485 2 port. It will not communicate on this port, only on port number 1. And I've asked Seplos why this is, and they said I probably have the wrong RS485 adapter and I need to buy a new one, and then the BMS will communicate on both ports. I don't know what this has to do with the model of the RS485 adapter, but this is the reply I got. So obviously, in order to upgrade your BMS, you need a software and the upgrade files, the new firmware. And you can download both at the Seplos website directly, seplos.com, but you have to create a user account with your email and a password to actually enable all the download links. I'll leave the link to their download website down under the video, as well as an alternative path to my Google Drive, where you can download all the files without logging in. So in here I'm using the brand new BMS Studio version 1.6.0.15. And I've also downloaded the newest firmware files for these version 3 BMSs as well. So I set the software into standalone mode, because we are connecting only one BMS at a time. I need to change this one to COM5. This is my virtual COM port for the RS485 adapter. And then I click on Start. And potentially nothing will happen, because the BMS is still asleep. Take a little screwdriver and wake it up. This should, yep, there's the light coming on. And if we start the connection again, yeah, immediately it connects. So we're at 78%, it claims. Not sure if this is true. And we are currently running firmware version 0.6. Now, in order to update, you need to identify which... And Seplos has made a 2-page document, which is 46 megabyte large. They just haven't compressed the picture size. And apparently there are 2 different methods to identify what kind of BMS you have, what hardware version you have. There is a hardware version 10 and a hardware version 11. And if you look at these pictures here, you can see the shunt is actually on a different position in regards to the terminals. So the older version 10 has got the shunts on the outside, while the newer version 11 has got the shunts in between the terminals. And this is for the 100 amp version. And you can see the version 10 of their 200 amp BMS has got 8 shunts. 8 shunts. In between the terminals. While the version 11 has only 2 shunts, and they are in between the terminals. So you can easily identify which BMS you have, and accordingly you need to flash the right firmware. So method 2, open the BMS upper computer software, and if the current firmware version you have on your BMS is 0.1 to 0.4, anything 0. It is the version 10 of their hardware, and if your firmware shows 1.1, it is the version 11. So if you go back into our software, I'm on version 0.6. So I'm obviously using the hardware version 10 of this BMS. Okay, to do the online update, we do stop the communication. We go to online upgrade, start the software. We connect via the virtual COM 5 again, leave all the other options as they are. Click on open, nothing happens. Click on browse, firmware, which one do we go? Oh, here, 18. And then I've got the 100 amp BMS going in here. I've got the version 10, and this is the file I want. So we click on open, and then we click on download. Yep, we get a progress bar. So obviously this is all working. And we should also see the lights flashing like this at the front of your BMS, front of your battery. Takes about 40-45 seconds for the full flashing process to finalize. Then it says download complete. You can get out of that. You can start the communication again. Click on system monitor. And we have now a firmware version 0.7. It's not the 0.8 I was expecting. Ah, it does a restart now. It restarts. Oh, you know what it does? It actually shuts down after the firmware update. There's no life anymore. This means either the BMS is totally now because you've chosen the wrong firmware, or it is just asleep. And there it is again. Okay, so this is pretty much the whole flashing process for the version 3 BMS from Seplos, and I'll do exactly the same on the other two BMSs now as well. So in order, I have to disconnect this cable here and plug it to the port number 1 down here, then turn this one on, start the flashing process, and do the same with battery number 3. There we go, we've reached the 176 amps outside, and it's only 11:30. Okay, so I have now updated all 3 BMSs to the firmware version 0.7. Okay, let me log in here to the software so we can change parameters. And the password is 000000. Enter. Now we are logged in. And if we go to parameter management, once we click read all, we can see all the parameters of our BMS. I just want to show you some of them because they are important for what we are going to do. I want to test this new firmware version of these BMSs and see if there's any improvement actually. We've got a cell high voltage alarm at 3.45 volts, and this is for a reason. I'll tell you this in a minute. I have also set the charge overcurrent protection to 25 amps, as well as the discharge overcurrent protection to negative 25 amps. There's an alarm at 23, charging and discharging, and the recovery is set to 20 amps for both as well. Fairly low current settings. Watch this space. So we're going all the way down. We have a charging request voltage of 55.2 volts, a charging request current of 25 amps. This is the maximum we want to ask for. I probably change this one to 20 only. And here as well, negative 20. We are asking only for 20 amps. To set your parameters, you can obviously click on the Set Parameters button. This would write all your basic parameters back to the BMS, but not the function switches. Yeah, there's another Set Parameter button here. This is only for the function switches. The other one is only for the parameters. You can also click the Download All button, which is not a download as we understand it. It downloads both settings, the basic parameters and the function settings, into the BMS. So it's more than upload all, but they call it download all because it's downloading into the BMS. So if you click this one, it does both. It uploads everything to the BMS. Okay, we want to do an export of this file, and we want to call this Seplos Polo. Replace it, yes. That means okay, I assume. So now we are going back to battery number 2. We're going to battery management. We're doing a read all. And we can see we have different charge and discharge currents still set. So we're going to load file. We're going to the Seplos Polo. Open. Bam. And now we have exactly the same settings for both the function switches as well as the basic parameters for battery number 2 and also battery number 3. And of course we are doing the same with battery number 1. Load file, Seplos Polo, success. Yep, check on the parameters down here, 55.2, 20 amps. Perfect. Okay, we can now disconnect. And we can now use some patch cables to go from port number 2 of the first BMS. Hang on, before we do that, other settings. Yes, it's other settings. So we want to set the protocol to Victron CAN set. Because I want to connect this one to my Victron gear. And I only need to do this for the master battery. And we don't need to do this for all 3 batteries, because only the master battery here at the top will be connected to the Victron system. All the other ones can have any protocol set, doesn't matter. So we go from RS485 number 2 to RS485 number 1 on the next battery. And then we use another patch cable, go from RS485 number 2 again down to port number 1 for battery number 3. So now we've got them all communicating with each other automatically. And this is the only way you can do it if you have all your dip switches set on 0. Now the BMS is talking to each other and they figure out the communication addresses automatically now. But as I said at the beginning, the downside is if you want to change the settings on one of the BMSs, you need actually to unplug this communication, because you need to get your communication cable into port number 1. And you also need to terminate the communication to the other battery. You have to fully isolate the battery from a communication perspective. Okay, we'll leave this in here for the moment. So while the communication is established, you can only use the RS485 port number 1 on the master battery to communicate to your computer. So right now, as I said, you cannot change any parameters anymore. You cannot see any parameters anymore, nothing. So we have to click on this button in the bottom right-hand corner and change the software from standalone to parallel mode. And this then automatically connects back to your master battery, which reads all the information of the slave batteries as well. You can see they have got different state of charges, different voltages, because all the circuit breakers are still off. And you can also click on any of the BMSs. It gives you an overview about all the electrical values. You also see a switch status info of this BMS. There's no alarm. And you've got more detailed information here on the right as well as the single cell voltages. So it's actually not bad. And the menu has changed as well. We cannot go into any parameter settings anymore. This is all not possible. Because now we are running in parallel mode, it only reads the main basic information, which is still quite a lot actually. So you get all the information you need actually. Once the parameters are set, you usually don't go in them anymore. It is just set as you set it. So that's actually a pretty cool feature of this software here, to give you an overview about all your batteries. And you can see you can have up to, I think it is 16 battery packs in parallel, and you can all monitor them here from one single screen. Okay, I think this concludes the software setup of the 3 Polo batteries. They are all on the same firmware version now. They're all on the same settings and parameter settings. Everything is exactly the same. And it's now time to hook them up to our battery, to our solar, and get them charged. Alright, so I have now connected the Polo batteries to our Powerwall 2.0 up here. Let's turn on our 63 amp circuit breaker. Nothing happened so far because the circuit breaker of the batteries are still off. And I want to measure the voltage before I actually connect anything here. Really want to ensure I've got the polarity right. So positive, negative, and we have 53.7 volts. This is from our battery shelf. Polarity is correct, so we can now turn on the circuit breaker of battery number 1. There we go. And we should now see a current of 10 amps going into battery number 1. All the other ones are still off. I'm turning on the circuit breakers here as well. To number 3, they're all on. We are live. Okay, my friends, here we go. We are charging 10 amps, 21 amps, 22 amps. So it gives you a very good overview of what's going on actually. But this time I want to go a step further. Because some people always told me, Andy, you're not testing 100% correctly, because you always have these batteries only in parallel to your battery shelf. But this is not really your production environment. It's not connected to your Raspberry Pi, to your Venus OS, and controlling all your system. No, it never did until today. So I'm going to disconnect all the batteries now here in the battery shelf, and we have this one as our main battery running. So this battery will tell our charge controllers, not to charge higher than, what did we say, 20 amps times 3. So it should charge the Polo batteries here with only 60 amps, right? And then it throttles down. Even we have the purest sunshine outside. I want to run the system for a couple of days only on this one battery and see how it performs, and also see if the battery information have improved with the new firmware. So the only problem is now the changeover from our battery shelf to this battery here, because everything is still connected to the PIDA boards, which are controlling my system and also getting all the information from the JK and JBD BMS and reporting this aggregated data to the Raspberry Pi with a CAN head there. So I can disconnect the LAN cable and plug in the other LAN cable to the Seplos batteries, but I'm not sure if it would switch over straight away. If it loses BMS communication, it shuts down. That's a safety measure in all systems when you have a smart BMS connected to your inverter or to the Victron system here. No communication, no power. So it's a bit risky to do that actually. All right, so I have set the battery monitor to automatic. It still selects the JK-BMS interface, the PIDA boards. But I also have to go into the DVCC, and I believe if I change the controlling BMS from a PIDA board to nothing, the whole system will stop working. But I've got only these options: PIDA boards, no BMS control. Okay, let's give it a try. If I do that, everything could just shut down. I don't know. No BMS control. We will get a lot of warnings because all the MPPTs, they are listening to the BMS, and when the BMS is not there anymore, they shut down as well. They are not producing any power anymore for safety reasons. I'm not sure about the inverter, if this one will shut down as well. I guess we will find out in a second. Okay, let's do no BMS control. That's it. Okay, so far everything is still running. They are still blue. We are still producing power, but I'm not sure at what stage they recognize there's no BMS anymore. Ah, yeah, they just did it. See, all the solar charge controllers, they went into float mode. You can see the green light everywhere. So this should give us enough time to change over the LAN cable here, and then we can switch over to the Polo batteries. Oh, everything is off now. It takes the multiplus a few minutes, and then it recognizes, oh, there's no BMS anymore, I better shut down. And it just did. Lights went off, computer went off, everything went off, power went off everywhere. Okay, I need to go to the house quickly and see what I need to shit. There we go. We've got errors on all MPPTs now. BMS connection lost. This is exactly what happens then. And I made a mistake anyway, because this black cable is not our CAN communication. The CAN communication goes up here with the 2 wires. So I have to actually disconnect the PIDA boards in here and have to connect my CAN communication from this battery to this green cable in there. So this is coming from our Polo battery, and I'm unplugging the green one from the PIDA boards and plug this into this side. So now the CAN communication goes from our Polo battery through the joiner into the green cable, which goes to our CAN head at the Raspberry Pi. My wife just came out yelling at me. The pump didn't work in the house anymore. It's connected from the pool side with an extension cable and running from the battery. Well, I plugged it into mains now again, so everything is fine. We've got all the time in the world now to figure this out. All right, communication is established back to the Venus OS. I also turned off all the main breakers for each of the battery banks, so they are all off. Okay, I am now logged in via my mobile phone to the Raspberry Pi via Wi-Fi. And I'm going back into the DVCC, going back into controlling BMS. And there we turn on the PIDA board. It still recognizes the Seplos battery as PIDA board. Turn them back on. Ah, and everything turns back on. Yay, we've got lights. One setting, huh? Okay, probably that was a mistake to turn off the controlling BMS in the DVCC. If you leave this on and switch over from one BMS onto another BMS, you've got like what was it, 1.5, 2 minutes or so before everything turns off. So this should give you enough time to switch over to another battery, or if you can't do it within this time, well, you will find out. See, and with such a setup now, I am not able to change the CCL quickly with all these batteries here. I would need to disconnect the communication between all the batteries, connect to each of them, and then set the CCL a bit higher to maybe 25 or 30 amps or something. And the reason I'm limited to 60 amps all in total is solely the circuit breaker here, which is carrying all my load. This is connecting this battery now to our battery shelf, charge controllers, the multi pluses, the Phoenix inverter, everything is running from the Seplos battery now, but we are limited by this breaker here, 63 amps. That's why I'm asking only for 60 amps charge current, continuous charge current. So we are going into an alarm with the top battery here, battery number 1, our master. See, we are going over 23 amps, and this triggers the alarm as per our settings. You can see the warning here is a Y. Now it is under 20, it recovers, and now it goes back to reporting a CCL of 20 amps. But then the current goes up to 23 again, and the warning comes back, the LED comes on, and it reports only 10 amps to the solar charge controllers. So this mechanic actually works. So that is totally fine. This is exactly as we programmed it. 25 is our maximum, then it would shut off. But a warning reduces only the CCL to 10 amps then. This is what Seplos does. It's not a bad thing, but it's not really necessary either. But as you can see here how it works, right? So here in the Seplos studio, we can see all 3 batteries. And battery 1 is doing this warning and cooling down again, what we have just seen on the battery. Yeah, if I log into this battery, you can see the current here over 23, so obviously it's on warning now and reports only 10 amps as a CCL, but the alarm protect info down here doesn't show anything about an alarm. Over ambient temperature, charge current alarm, there it is, and it's active now. See, we are charging with 25 amps almost, and now the current is going down because the alarm is active. Let's see if this one disappears when we go under 20 amps. Too much sun at the moment. It's charging full blast. Come on, go under 20. Just to recover. Now we are under 20 amps. It clears the alarm. Current increases now to 23. Alarm kicks back in, but it doesn't show unless you hit this little toggle switch here. Watch, 23. Yeah, here comes the alarm again. But if you toggle this switch here, you can't see any alarms. I think this is a bug. So if you go over 23, you'll see nothing. See? There should be an alarm. It should show this alarm here, which it does when you turn this one on. Okay, I'll report this back to Seplos as a bug, either the software or the firmware, I don't know. Okay, so we are now charging beautifully. We can see 86.8, 85, 84.8%. They might be not at the same level, but they should balance out once we get to a higher voltage. So let's see when we go to 95, 97%, if it then freezes, but still keeps charging for hours. This is what it was with the version 0.6 of the firmware. Hopefully this is all fixed now and we have a more linear display of the state of charge. Does it reset to 100% as well? I don't know. I'll explain more about this after the lunch. Okay, see you in 20 minutes or so. So, and we have now reached 97.5% with battery number 1. The other 2 are still catching up, at least from what they are showing. I'm not sure if they are fully calibrated. It's a bit cloudy at the moment and we're getting shading on the roof. So not charging super fast anymore. But we should still see an increase in state of charge, as we have just seen here, battery number 2. Oh yeah, it goes further, 97.6 now. Because with the old software, it got stuck at 97.5% and would stay there forever until basically the battery shut off. And then it jumped to 100%. But here it seems to 3 amps. Really? Come on, sun. I didn't say sunny hot Australia this morning. I only said sunny. It's not even sunny anymore. Battery tests with clouds. Oh god, come on. We just jumped to 97.7. Okay, this seems to be fixed now. We should see a linear increase now to 100%. or too close to 100%, and then it should stay there until we hit the over voltage protection, because this is a reset to 100%. But maybe they have also fixed the other trigger to 100%, which is, we have a look in the BMS comparison table under Seplos version 3, and the reset to 100% trigger is either again the total voltage over voltage protection, confirmed working, cell over voltage protection, confirmed working as well. And then there's also a battery voltage is higher than the cell high voltage alarm times 16 for 30 minutes. Yeah, this is something Seplos does for a while now with the version 2 and version 3 of their BMSs, but it has never worked for me here while connected to a solar system. It always worked in the lab when we connected our power supply to the battery and just increased the voltage and then let it sit perfectly flat on this voltage for 30 minutes, it reset to 100%. But in a production environment, I've never seen this working. Because this 30-minute timer, I think it resets it once it goes only one tiny microsecond under this cell high voltage alarm, and then it starts the 30 minutes again, so I have never seen it. That's why I've said here confirmed working with power supply, but not in practice when solar is connected. And it goes to 98.2 now. Look at this, nice. 93.2, 93, so they are slowly catching up. And this one is continuously increasing now. It is good, I like it. Oh, f***ing hell. Oh, really? As soon as I pulled out the other two batteries, everything shut down again. Everything. Now we haven't got water in the house. Just wait for my wife. 3, 2, 1. But then after a while it turns back on even with one battery, like now. So everything comes back to life. But why is this happening if I disconnect two of the batteries from the communication only? It shuts down everything. Okay, so I'm now connected back to battery number 1. Want to have a look in the parameter management again. Read all. Cell high voltage alarm at 3.45 volts. So if we hit this and we stay there for 40 minutes, we will then reset to 100% state of charge. This works with a power supply, but has never worked while connected to solar, because the voltage is never constant over 3.45 volts. And then you would say, okay, set the cell high voltage alarm lower to 3.43 volts or something, because then if the voltage is changing at 3.45 volts a bit, the 3.43, which is the trigger for this alarm, will stay, and we meet the requirements to reset to 100%. But then as soon as one of the cells is over 3.43 volts and triggers your alarm, this BMS will report a CCL of 10 amps to your inverter then. So it doesn't charge full power anymore. So you could actually go into the switch functions and disable this cell high voltage alarm. See, this one is turned on by default. You only disable the alarm, not the protection, just the alarm. And then the BMS doesn't report 10 amps anymore and keeps charging full power until you hit the 3.45 volts. So you can actually make it work. But I was going to see if this has actually improved now with the new firmware, but I don't think it has improved, because we are still at 98.5%, which we were like 45 minutes ago. The battery is still charging. We've got no alarm. And look at this, all the cells, they are under 3.36 volts. This is our highest. They're all under that. The state of charge does not change anymore. It does not move. So this battery will stay there at 98.5% forever now until the battery is fully charged. So at the moment I cannot really see an improvement to the older firmware version in terms of showing the correct state of charge. It was linear all the time until you hit 98.5%. Let's have a look at the other cells. I reconnect them back, then we can see them all at once. And we should see them coming up. Yeah, see, they are still charging 12 amps, 10 amps. See, we are still charging with 14 amps. Continuously, and 98.5%. And it is the same at the bottom when you discharge this battery. At some point it shows like 4% or something, and it keeps discharging and discharging and discharging. Even you are at 3.1 volts or something, it shows you 4%. So the state of charge calculation, estimation is still not fixed, I would say, from what I can see right now. But let's give it a couple of more minutes here, and then we will see if there's any improvement, but I don't think it is at the moment. All right, talk to you in a couple of minutes. So my friends, it is now 3:30, so half an hour ago. All the state of charge are still showing 98.5%. Batteries are still charging, but we can see battery number 1 has actually tapered off. So this one is already fully saturated at this 54.7 volts. Yeah, and I'm turning on the camera right now because cell voltages are now slowly rising. We are at 3.42 volts. And as soon as some load kicks in, like the pump or something, we can see pack number 1 actually discharges while the others are still charging. Okay, we have now reached the 55.2 volts, almost 55.06 it shows. We've definitely reached the 3.45 volts with some of the cells. You can see the balancer is kicking in, the passive balancer. We've got 20 millivolt deviation, it's not too bad. And as you can see, we are still showing 98.5, 98.8 and 99.1%. So we are getting somewhere. None of the batteries is actually showing an alarm. Only if you click on this icon, we can see a cell high voltage alarm. But for some reason, it doesn't show. Oh, now it shows. Right. What's here? Battery number 2, cell high voltage alarm. Yep, that works. Okay, I'll take it back. It shows the high voltage alarm now. Everything is good. Balancing is happening here. 4 cells at the time. So still charging with 10 amps, 8 amps and 1 amp into the batteries. 99%, 99.3. So let's give this half an hour and see if the battery actually resets to 100%. And I'll be right back then. Hopefully. Seplos, please, please. So I'm back. It is now 4:20. Battery number 1, 98.6. The other 2 batteries on 99.9%. We are still at 55.2 volts. We have shared voltage sense turned on, but we are only charging to 55.16 volts. Because the MPPTs, they should now adapt to this voltage here, regardless if this is correct or not, and then charge accordingly. So we should actually see the 55.2 volts, not 55.15. And I've just checked the SVS, the shared voltage sense, is turned on in the Victron DVCC. It's a good sentence, right? Yeah, and all the batteries are on standby mode now, so neither current is going in or out of the battery. They are still balancing. The deviation has actually increased here in battery number 2. It has also increased in battery number 3, and it has slightly decreased in battery number 1. So the balancer is really not great. Well, not resetting to 100% and showing the customer, the user, actually the battery is on 100%. Because now it sits on 99 in Victron, and you would say, well, why has it stopped charging at 99%? Why is it not charging to 100%? Has the battery already degraded? Is there something wrong? What is going on? You know, you've got all these questions as a user. So it should show 100%, and the battery is at 100% now. We are at 55.2 volts, and it is fully saturated. So the battery is now really at 100% state of charge, I would say. But it doesn't show. But this is only one problem I see here. The other problem is, what now? If you have such a battery at home and you've got a lot of solar and you reach this 99.9% in the morning at 11 o'clock, what about the rest for the day? You know, you keep the battery on 55.2 volts forever, basically. It just stays there. It keeps the battery at this level forever. So I cannot really see any improvement here in this firmware 0.7 to the 0.6 before. The battery is still not charging to 100%, or at least it doesn't show the 100%. And it still keeps the voltage at your set CVL, the charge voltage limit. And this really shows again how far ahead JK with their BMS already is. They have implemented requested charge voltage, requested float voltage, a float timer, an absorption timer. And you can fully custom build your charge curve in the BMS. And then the BMS controls your MPPTs with Victron or your inverter accordingly. So I think this is a very good solution, and that's how it's supposed to be. But here, we just charge to a certain voltage and then stay there for the rest of the life. Well, at least until the sun goes down. But still, you keep the battery on an unnecessary higher voltage for no particular reason. Just because the BMS software cannot do differently. As I said, I cannot see any improvements or changes. I need to have a look if there's a changelog actually somewhere. Because I don't know what they have improved. But some people have left comments and sent me emails as well and told me that the state of charge display has actually improved. But as you have just seen, I cannot confirm that. So let's see what will happen in the next couple of days. If there's anything interesting, I will have the camera here anyway, record everything, and then make maybe a short follow-up video within a week or so. Let you know what's going on with the Seplos BMS version 3 here in the Polo batteries. And it's really a shame. I really like these batteries, I really like this BMS, but I don't like the software. And I'm not sure how much influence Seplos actually has on programming such a software. I probably make some suggestions to them and see if they are happy to make some updates for this BMS. And also some of you guys have actually bought the active balancer from Seplos, so please leave your comments down below how this goes. I have watched the Seplos videos and it looks like the active balancer connects actually to the version 3 of the BMS. But does it actually control it? Does it turn it on when the passive balancer comes on at the same time? Or what is the control mechanism? What can you actually do? I know the active balancer comes on when the deviation goes over 50 millivolt automatically. But somehow there's also a connection between the version 3 of their BMS and the active balancer. What does it do? How does it work? I haven't got one here. Should I get one to test it? So leave your comments down below. Alright guys, so far this back to the Seplos BMS from today. As always, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for all your amazing support. And until the next video, guys, you stay charged, stay safe, and thanks again for watching. See you then. Bye-bye. So the new firmware version 0.7 of the Seplos version 3 BMS is not so boom as expected. Same old, same old.